Okay, so hey everybody. I'm making this video at the request of a couple members of my Discord group who were asking about using the volume profile for scalping, for intraday scalping. And they had just commented that they've searched on YouTube and just couldn't find anything relevant specifically on using the profile for scalping. So I'm just going to do this kind of rough. I haven't like planned this out particularly, but I have a bit of time and I just wanted to get this made. So I apologize in advance if it's not super organized. But I do think it will be helpful for anybody who's interested in scalping and interested in the volume profile. So I do think there's a little bit of just preliminary sort of info that I want to get out of the way when it comes to understanding the profile and understanding price movement. So normally when we think of price movement, and let's just take for instance an uptrend, we think of price kind of doing this stuff, right? Making these higher highs and higher lows. Really straightforward. This shouldn't be new to anybody who is involved in trading in any capacity. And this is normally what we're used to seeing. And what I kind of want you to do for a moment is just sort of suspend your concept of this being an uptrend for a moment so that we can think about how price is actually moving. Because price itself doesn't move sideways, right? Time moves sideways, but price just moves up and down. It just so happens that it takes time in order for that to happen. And if we look at the way price actually moves and the way that the market interacts, what we actually have is, again, sort of the interaction of participants in the market. And what ultimately moves price is when there are more market order buyers than there are sellers, right? And so when we see, for instance, price have a strong, let's just say, let me get rid of this for a moment. Let's just say price has, you know, a little bit of movement here, and then a very strong impulse, right? And we see this kind of thing a lot in the markets. What's really happening here is during these strong impulses, there are a lot of people hitting the market buy, right? And not so many people with limit order sells. And it's the lack of limit orders that actually allows price to move this swiftly upward, right? So it's a lack of liquidity on the limit order side of things. And then price finds an area where sellers are a little more willing to participate. And those market buy orders have to, so basically, you have to remember that a every trade has a buy and a sell, right? And generally what's happening is the buy orders are sort of consuming the market buy orders, I should say, are consuming the limit sell orders and vice versa, right? A market sell order is consuming a limit buy order. And those limit orders are sort of what create these, I guess you can call them like floors or ceilings. And I'm sort of stealing that terminology from Peter Davies from Jigsaw. He uses it in reference in a slightly different context, but I think it's an apt analogy here. And so again, what we have here in a strong impulse is a lot of market buy orders and a lack of limit sell orders. And then when we start to consolidate, what's actually happening there is not necessarily that the market buying slows down, although that sometimes is the case. But what is more important to understand is that what's really causing that consolidation and that slowdown is that that is an area where there is the presence of limit sell orders, and it's those limit sell orders that are slowing things down. And as price churns around in here, volume is accumulating. So what price ultimately does, okay, if we just again suspend our understanding of these higher highs and higher lows, what price really does is, let me see what's the best way for me to do this here. Price moves up until it finds a pocket of liquidity, okay? And let me get a good shape here. Until it finds a pocket of liquidity. And a pocket of liquidity, what I mean is essentially a pocket of limit orders, okay? And it churns around in there. There are limit orders in both directions, and volume is accumulating until one side, either the buyers or the sellers, overcomes the limit orders on the other side, and then price moves up again. If the buyers win out, price moves up again until it finds another pocket of liquidity. Again, that pocket of liquidity just being an area where the sellers are more interested in engaging and they are placing more limit orders. And it's those limit orders which slow down the upward progress. It doesn't mean that people stopped hitting the market buy. Again, sometimes that does occur, but what we're often seeing is the presence of limit orders coming into the market on the opposite side. Okay, and this is what price does. Now, sometimes what happens is price comes up here, finds this pocket of liquidity, and then maybe wants to kind of retest some of this stuff down here. It might move back down and test and just make sure that like this is still kind of holding, that the buyers are still stronger before it comes back up into this pocket and then eventually continues its upward progress, right? Until again, it finds another pocket of liquidity. And what happens at a reversal is one of two things. So either the market has found a pocket of liquidity and moved up and just never found another pocket of liquidity because the buyers did in fact just sort of fizzle out. And this is often when you just see like a selling tail. So price just moves up and then just tends to kind of fall back down into this. And then a lot of times, if it failed to find acceptance up here, right? So if the buyers didn't keep buying and find sellers up here, then it often is going to come down through this and test down. But that's kind of a little bit more detail than we need right now. Or what sometimes happens is you get a larger sort of distribution, right? So you get another pocket of liquidity, and a lot of times it ends up being a quite big one. And you can see there's just a lot of energy building here. And price may try to push up out of it and just never really gets kind of fully out of this zone. And this is ultimately what we're seeing in our volume profile, right? So if I were to take this and we were to look at this on a volume profile, right? You'd sort of have the edge of your profile there, and then just to kind of make a rough thing, you'd have a high volume node, and then a low volume area, and then a high volume node, and then a low volume area, and then a high volume node, and a low volume area. And in addition to that, what you often see in price is, to correspond to this central chart, price moves up kind of to the top of where this liquidity pocket is, chops around in here a little bit as the buyers are consuming those limit sell orders. Sometimes it might even poke its way down. Like I said, it might test a lower liquidity pocket before eventually continuing up, hitting those limit orders, churning around, continuing up, hitting limit orders. I'm running out of space here. Again, might come down and test the top of this and then continuing up again. Okay. And, sorry. And so that's really what's happening, right? This is how price actually moves. It's the interaction of market orders and limit orders that causes price to move and then to consolidate and then to move and then consolidate. And ultimately what the market is doing is looking for these liquidity pockets, right? Looking for these areas of acceptance where both buyers and sellers are willing to engage, right? And what happens, right, if sellers are engaging here and then price moves out, eventually those sellers give up, right? They're going, hey, price is moving up. I'm not going to keep selling here because it's going against me. And that's why price kind of moves up swiftly through this area until it gets high enough that sellers go, okay, this is looking a little better. Maybe I'll try again, right? And then if price starts moving out of this, eventually it starts to cause pain to those sellers and they have to exit their positions, which keeps fueling this up. And again, they're not willing to keep selling because it hasn't been working for them until it gets significantly high again, where the sellers are again, willing to try and re-engage because they see price has extended upward, right? And as price gets extended upward, also you might get less buyers willing to engage because they go, hey, like this is pretty high up here. I don't really want to engage. So to take this into the live market, this is a recent. I didn't cherry pick this. This is just recent price action on the S&Ps, right? And let me see here. Why isn't this auto centering for me? Maybe it's because of these drawings. I don't know. Okay, so let's just look at this here. So this is just a profile. This is from a 1 hour chart of the S&P 500, and all I did was just get rid of the price action. And this is what you're seeing, right? So we have liquidity pocket, movement up, liquidity pocket, movement up, liquidity pocket, movement up. And if we bring the price action back into this, right? This is what probably why it wasn't auto centering is because I didn't have the actual price action on the chart. This is what we have, right? Price moves, consolidates, forms a higher low, moves, consolidates, forms a higher low, moves, consolidates, forms a higher low, so on and so forth. And so while typical price action traders, we often and I'm very much a price action trader too, let me get rid of some of this stuff. Sorry, guys. There's probably a faster way to do this, but I'm not that savvy. Okay. So for a typical price action trader, we're looking at these, higher highs and higher lows, and we say, we consider this trend intact until it breaks structure, right? And then eventually, forms that lower low and that lower high, right? The lower low here, lower high here. From a profile standpoint, what's happening is you've got, let's just see if I can do it like this. What often happens is you have, again, a high volume node, low volume node, high volume node, low volume node, high volume node, low volume node. And then again, we might have another high volume node. Whoops, my mouse ran out of room there. Sorry, guys. That's a funky one, but it's because my mouse hit the top of my my mouse pad there. Another high volume node at the top. And when price makes a reversal on the profile, what we have is usually the price will, sort of form a volume cluster. And what we're actually looking, rather than focusing on the low on the price action, what we are looking at is, does it break through a previous liquidity pocket, right? So again, if we had, whoops, that's not what I wanted. Let's just take this as that previous idea, right? We've got price moving upward, and we've got liquidity pockets sort of along the way. This is just a very crude representation, but doing my best. For me to sort of confirm a reversal, right, what we'd actually want to see price do is if price had sort of worked its way up here and then started to consolidate at this liquidity pocket, usually what's going to happen is price is going to break down out of this. A lot of times it'll come back up and retest it. And if it doesn't come back through after testing down here, if it doesn't come through and it retests, and a lot of times it'll hit like almost exactly the high volume node, the point of control of this volume cluster. What we really want to see is for it to break through a previous volume cluster. then our downtrend is really confirmed, right? And often, again, it's going to come back up and test the underside of that volume cluster and then continue to do the same thing, right? It might stall a little bit at this volume cluster because it's, having trouble getting through that area where there was a lot of liquidity before, gets through it, comes back up, tests it from the underside, right? Again, might stall because there's liquidity there, gets through it, tests it from the underside, and then moves down. So you can see how if we were to draw, some lines here, right? Like this liquidity pocket was formed by this consolidation. And if it gets broken through, it often gets tested from the other side. This consolidation itself is going to create a new liquidity pocket for this down move. So like this would be the profile of the up move. We could draw another one here from the down move. And that's ultimately what we're seeing on a regular basis in the market. And then again, if we were to look at this, high volume area from this consolidation, that's what formed this high volume area. As price came down to it, it maybe struggled a little bit. When it finally broke through that volume, and then it often will come back up and test it from the underside, which is also testing this new liquidity pocket that was formed here from the underside. And that's how price is interacting with these volume areas, or I should say how these volume areas are formed by price and also how price is interacting with them. So I hope that's not like super confusing, but we're going to look at the actual market now and kind of see how this plays out. And I'm going to look at just the like recent price action, right? So let me go over to this chart because this is the actual current contract and I can back test it. Okay, so this is the same area. This is a 4-hour chart, and let's just draw a profile on this, right? So from here to here, what do we see? Okay, we see all those. This is the exact same volume profile I showed you previously. Price came up, again, formed this huge volume here. So whenever you see that, right, you know that the move out of that's probably going to be powerful. And what did it do? It moved down, broke through this previous liquidity pocket, right? So this volume cluster here was formed by this consolidation. And if we were to draw a horizontal line from, where that volume is sort of concentrated, like you can see it really, there's like a ledge right here. If we draw a horizontal line, you can see that when price broke through that, it came back up and tested the underside of that. We can also see that where did it stall after it broke through? Well, it stalled where there was liquidity before, because again, it's that liquidity that slows down price. And again, if we draw a horizontal line where this liquidity is, right, you can see it stalled, broke down, came back up, tested it from the underside. You'd have to look at this on a little bit of a smaller time frame. Let's go to the hourly, right? You can see it broke through that, tested it from the underside, not exactly, like pushed a little bit up, and then fell down again. And you can see again, on its way back up, it's stalling where this liquidity is. Now, we didn't really get much of a reaction here. We did get a little bit if you were to look at this on like a 5-minute chart, right? And where did price ultimately stall? Well, this liquidity pocket here is the one that kind of ultimately stopped price. We had no way of knowing that that was the one that was going to do it, right? But when we saw that price hit this and failed to get through it and then came up out of it, that's a good sort of hint that maybe price at the very least is going to retest some of this stuff up here. And what might it retest? Well, if we draw a profile of just the downtrend, we see that there's all this liquidity, all this volume right here, right? Lots of sort of arguing about price right here. So when this down move started to fizzle out, we said, well, where might price want to go to retest? Well, this high volume area. And you can see we came up into that high volume and then moved down again. So when I'm scalping, and this is a 4-hour chart, or this is a 1-hour chart, but it's no different for anything else, right? When we're trading, scalping, swing trading, it doesn't really matter. We want to recognize that these areas of high volume are going to be areas where price has trouble getting through. So if, for instance, I'm looking to go long here, I'd either want to wait until price comes down to test the top side of a previous high volume area where I can lean against that volume as support, because we know that price is going to have a hard time getting through that. It's going to slow price down. It'll give you time to consider whether you want to get out of your trade, if you can get out, maybe break even if things are going against you, or we wait for price to convincingly move out of this volume area, right? And then we lean on this volume area as our support. Similarly, we can always look at previous moves, right? So I've drawn these lines across from these previous moves, and I can use this, right? If price, see how price moved through this high volume area, this dotted line I have here drawn from that, price went right through it with almost no reaction. When that happens, it's very likely that price is going to come back up and retest that. When you get no reaction to it, a lot of times there's just unfinished business there. We know that so many people transacted here. And so there's going to be a lot of people that maybe want to try to work their way out of positions and get out at break even there. So that would be a great place for a short entry. Now, again, you can take a long off this high volume area. I personally wouldn't have tried to catch the falling knife right there. But again, when we did work our way down through that and then price started to kind of test this volume from the underside, that might be an area where you're interested in going short. It's also a way, like I actually got long here, down here as sort of like a swing trade, although I ended up just closing it out in a few hours because it moved a lot quicker than I expected. But knowing that there's all this volume here, I got out of the trade before we hit this volume because I know that that's likely to slow price down, and that's exactly what happened, right? We came into this volume, we churned for a while, we poked up a little higher. I mean, I got out here. So, I mean, I guess I could have held it longer, but you can see there was quite a good rip downward off of that volume area. Now, the other thing we can look at, and you always want to be aware of the different time frames that are interacting, a lot of volume right here. And if we kind of look at like, well, what else might be going on there? If we zoom this way out, and let me just get rid of some of the stuff on this chart. And then we're going to go into a shorter time frame and look at some actual like intraday price action. But I always do look at the bigger price action as well. And again, if we just take a look at all this recent price action, look at how much volume, and this really all accumulated right here in this price action right here. But again, look at the volume there. If we draw a line, let's make this line thicker so we can distinguish it from the other one. Okay, that's from the daily chart, right? Now let's go back into our 1 hour. Well, look where all of this happened, right? That was an area that had a lot of significance in the volume on the daily chart. And that's, where all of this chop was sort of centered around, and also where we found, look at this sort of reaction right there down. Again, more resistance down, more resistance down. And now we're kind of getting above it. I'd really like to see us honestly close above this VPOC right here. That would be a great sign for today for us to maybe continue up and fill in some of this low volume area here, test this larger consolidation. Whether or not we get through this larger consolidation, I don't know, but maybe at least test the underside of it would be nice. But those are the kinds of things that we're considering when we're looking at the volume profile and how it interacts with price, right? So, okay, now let's just take a look at yesterday. I think yesterday was a pretty good example of price action. And let's go down to a 1 minute chart. Pardon me as I sort of scroll through here. Okay, so I traded the morning yesterday, and a lot of times what I'll do, now this is my trading view chart. I often, so I'm trading on NinjaTrader right now, and I do the same thing on my NinjaTrader chart, but I think this is a little bit easier to manipulate for the purposes of making a video than NinjaTrader is. So let's just take a look at this big down move. And this is often what I'll do when I'm trading intraday, right? So I'm going to look at this sort of whole swing down here. And you know what I'll actually do is, let's do it this way. Sorry, guys. let's put this on replay. And we'll kind of just go through this, right? So this is our market replay. Okay, before the day starts, when I'm scalping, I'm always going to look at a higher time frame. A lot of times I'll look at the 4-hour or the 1-hour, and I just want to be aware of where volume is. Now this is a little bit funky. This on our shorter time frame hasn't happened yet, so we're just going to sort of ignore that. But I'm going to be aware that right here, let's do it this way. I'm going to get rid of this profile. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just look at like this leg up, right? This last big move up. I'll draw a profile over it. NinjaTrader has a profiling tool like this as well, right? So I want to look at this big move up and I want to say, where is the volume sort of consolidated here? And particularly, I'll look at points of control of these areas. Let's wait for this profile to fill in. So I want to look at where like the highest volume is in these areas. Okay, so there's some volume there. There's a bit of volume here, but also there's this kind of ledge right there that I want to be aware of. So I've got these zones, right? This is where the volume is concentrated. And then in addition to these zones, I'll mark little lines where the highest volume is. So when the day starts, and we're right here at about 9:26, and a lot of times, I don't know if I can, sometimes I'll try this, but it might mess us up. I can get a 30-second chart on this. Okay, a lot of times, I use a tick chart on NinjaTrader. It's going to move a lot faster at the open, but they don't have tick charts on TradingView. So we can see that, you know, we had this move down in the pre-market, and where did it stall? It stalled right about at that volume point of control from that we were just looking at the hourly charts. This is that gray box that I drew, and this is the dotted line that I drew across. Okay, so you know, kind of seeing this when I start the day, I'm just going to say, okay, we're in a downtrend, so let me just get a profile going so I can see how this downtrend is forming. Where is the volume of this downtrend? If we pop back up to here, right, this little area here, I may be interested in potentially going short, for instance, because we formed this volume and broke down out of it. You can see we already tested it once, but let's just see how this plays, right? So price is kind of moving. Let me zoom in a little bit, make it a little bit easier to see. Oops, that was a funky email sound that came in my headphones there. Okay, so this is the open. You can see the big volume spike there. We'll just kind of wait and see what happens at the open. So price is moving down pretty aggressively. Okay, so as price continues to move down, you know, again, I want to be aware of how volume is building. We can see that we're consolidating a little bit. We're starting to build some volume here. Now, if I think that I have a bias towards continuation, what I can look to do is sell towards the top end of this volume cluster as it's forming. I can scalp out some of my position towards the bottom just in case we chop around sideways and just build volume here. And I can always hold a position to go further down. If I'm not that confident in the strength of the down move, I might wait and see if we pop back up so I can lean against this volume here as my support, because it's that liquidity that creates the support, right? It's those limit orders, and I know that there's been limit orders here in the past, which means there's a decent probability of limit orders there in the future. But let's just see how this goes. Okay, so price sort of broke down out of that volume. And at this point, let's simplify this a little bit. Actually, let me just get rid of this profile and let's just draw a profile over just what we're seeing right now. Okay. Now, these profiles on here aren't as great as like if you're looking at actual order flow. I'm trading off the Jigsaw Dome currently, and I really like what that allows me to see. But again, I see this consolidation. Like I said, you could have potentially sold, seeing the strength of this price action, could have sold the top of this high volume area. You could have scalped out a little bit down here. I mean, that's, you know, a 2 point move, 1.5 points maybe. You could hold some for continuation. But I might also see if price comes back up and retest this area on a retracement. The closer we get to this volume pocket, the sort of safer my entry is. Because again, this volume that's building here is going to make it more difficult for price to continue through. Also, we know that if price does continue through, it's likely to retest it from the top side, which gives me an opportunity to get out of my trade, right? So if price just pushes through, I can get out of my trade at break even or with minimal loss on that retest. So let's watch and see how this continues. So strong move down. Again, this is like a 30-second chart right now. Okay, so price is consolidating, and if I move my profile over, we see that again we're creating this high volume area here and sort of down here. So likely there was a little kind of micro consolidation in here. You could see this little spike on order flow. On if you're watching a footprint chart or a good dome, you would have seen this pocket of volume here, and that would have been a good short entry for me to just scalp this downward move. Now, I trade pretty fast and aggressively when I'm scalping. So I would have seen this come down, seen this volume kind of created. You can, if I actually do this, you'll see that it was, here we go. So we can see the volume already starting to be built there, right? And so if we come up and test this, that could be a decent area for a short entry. Let's watch this again. It's a little bit more zoomed in. So you can see how it came up and tested this little volume pocket here. And then continued down. So that could be a quick scalp right there, leaning against that volume. But that's micro like volume. That's, I mean, again, I'm watching order flow and watching the dome for that. Okay, you can see that the volume's continuing to build down here, and we're going to pop up. Now remember, we don't really worry about the trend reversing unless we break through a previous volume area. So as this is moving up here, even if I am, like I could be considering going short here because we're building this volume area, right? And so kind of shorting towards the top of that, getting out towards the bottom. And if it moves against me a little bit, I might even scale in up to this area. But if we start looking like we're going to push through this area, I'm getting out of that trade. So what happens? So you can see, kind of move down. Again, these are scalpable moves. As you see this consolidation building, you can be shorting towards the top. That's about 23, 23.50. Maybe we'll call it 23 just to be conservative. And you can get out, down here towards this high volume 19, right? So that's some decent movement there. Let's speed this up a little bit. Okay, and then price pushes down. Now notice what happened, right? We built volume, pushed down out of it, and then what do? We came back up and we retested that high volume area after we broke down. That's another great short entry because you have this pocket of volume to lean on. We know that it's going to be difficult for price to get through that. Now, if it does, if it gets through this high volume, then we have to consider exiting our trade, but we also know there's a chance it's going to come down and test it from the top, and that's our opportunity to get out at break even. Let's just, again, see what happens. So strong move down out of that volume area. Now what happened here? Probably another little pocket of volume, you see, as we consolidated. And then you see price moves back up, and as it moves towards this other pocket of volume, you have that as support if you wanted to, or as resistance, I should say, if you wanted to think of another short scalp. And so ultimately, this is how I'm looking at the market when I'm scalping. I'm looking at how price is interacting with these volume areas. Okay, now what do we see? We see volume building more down here. And now I'm usually I'm using a tick chart. I'm on NinjaTrader. One other tool that I have up is Cumulative Delta. And I'm looking for divergences on there to know how confident I feel about continuation here. But you can see we built volume in this consolidation. That was this volume here. We pushed down out of it. When we came up to it from the underside, this is a great place to get short. If you're just going for a point or 2 points, there's plenty of opportunity here. I mean, even if you got in right at the bottom here, 0950, and just took it down to like where this volume started, that's 0750. So that's a 2-point move there. Really easy 2-point scalp there. Really, really easy. Let's see how price continues. Now that we're entering another area that we had marked off as a previous zone from the leg up, from the previous leg up. So we marked this zone off. And this red dotted line was the highest volume node, right? The volume point of control. So we're going to see how price interacts with that. We don't know if it's going to give us a like exact reaction, but we might, knowing this is here, this might make us hesitant to continue taking shorts into this, especially if I'm watching my cumulative delta on my other chart and I'm seeing divergences come in, if I'm seeing the buying strength increase, and especially on the order flow, if I'm seeing buying strength increase, right, on the dome. So I'm going to watch and just see how price is interacting. But this whole time, again, what I do is I just keep, as long as this is a downtrend, I just keep kind of tracking the volume of this downtrend. And I just want to see where are the volume pockets developing, the liquidity pockets, and make sure that we're not breaking through a previous one. Now we might form one and then come up a little bit, right? But unless we've broken below this one, I don't care if we come up a little bit, right? I'm looking at the previous one, if that makes sense. So you can see we formed volume here. That's from this consolidation. We came down out of it. We popped up, tested the underside. Another great area to consider a short because you can lean on this volume to act as resistance and to slow down the movement, right? And I want to play this out until we start to get a reversal because we did get a reversal on this day, and I want you guys to see how that works. Now, remember there was 2 high volume nodes that we marked off of this previous move, right? This previous move was from when we were looking at our 1-hour chart. You see there was this, and then there was also this, right? We're kind of looking at this whole volume section as an area where, when we're in this, you can also expect that there might be some choppiness, right? There might be some real choppiness. So let's just go back to the 30-second chart, see how this continues to play. So you can see as we're in here, the buying pressure starts in. We can expect that because this was a previous area where there was 2-way trading. That's why the volume built there, because both parties were willing to engage. Now notice we've come up into this sort of thing, and I'm looking at this as all kind of one area. This is all kind of one area. All right. And you can see we never pushed through all of this. So, anytime there's not a really clear low volume node, like this is a clear low volume node, this is a clear low volume node. Anytime you see that, you want to just consider this to be all one area, even though we do know in the price action there was multiple small consolidations. Other thing I just want to point out, and I'll use a different line for this, but notice these low volume nodes are often what you would consider your like more traditional support and resistance lines. See if I draw this purple line at the low volume. See, that's your more traditional support and resistance, right? And then we kind of continue to push down. Now we had this previous cluster here. So if I took a short, recognizing that we were still in this, maybe like for me, I might have gotten short here, and if price moved against me a little bit, I might have stayed in my short. I might have even added to it as long as we didn't essentially get past this purple line, past this low volume node. I'm okay with adding to my short position and averaging in and getting a better price as long as it's within my rules. So I scaling in is part of my training plan, and I have rules around it, like a maximum number of contracts that I'll scale into, and also sort of a line in the sand where if my bias then shifts, I have to get out of the trade, right? So you've got to you've got to have rules if you're going to scale in, or you can really burn yourself. Now, what I was going to say though is kind of seeing this cluster here, if I had scaled in, I might have started to exit some of the position because again, there's volume from this consolidation, right? And sometimes that's the start of a reversal. You get volume, a push in the opposite direction, and then a retest and it rejects, right? So you just want to be careful about that. But in this case, we didn't reverse there. So again, look right at the high volume node, get a little bit of buying pressure put in that high volume node from the previous upswing. Now we're building volume, right, as we consolidate, and we have this previous volume area here. So where would I look to take a short? Well, if I think that this price action is really strong and that we might not even make it up here, I can look to just scalp as we're consolidating here, scalp around this. Or I can wait and see if we get kind of closer to this big volume and use this big volume area as support, which is often a little bit safer. You can see how we're just churning around this volume, right? So there are some scalps available there. It's a little bit of a riskier thing to do. And when I'm doing that, I almost always, well, I really am always going in the direction of the prevailing trend. So I'm not scalping long positions because the probability is that you're going to consolidate and then continue, generally speaking, unless you have reason to believe otherwise. And, reason to believe otherwise could be cumulative delta, divergences. It could be order flow, etc. And so we're starting to kind of get this more expanded consolidation. And what's going to happen is you're starting to get a much larger volume area. And when you start to see that, you start going, okay, what's going on here? Because we've had this huge move down, and all of a sudden there's lots of volume here. So a lot of times, to me, that tells me that buyers are stepping in, right? They're holding their ground here, and sellers are trying to sell, but buyers are holding their limit orders more, right? They're reloading their limit orders and absorbing the selling, and that's why the volume is able to accumulate here like this. And so I'm going to be looking for signs of reversal when I start seeing volume accumulate like that. That's going to start to put my warnings up, and especially I'm going to be looking at delta. I'm going to be looking at order flow. Okay, so we start to get a push up. Now we have this cluster here. This is going to be the first cluster that if we're going to get a reversal, I want to see this cluster right here, right? This is the one that I want to see break, okay? That's going to be our first sign of reversal. Because a lot of people will be jumping in long already here, but that's a really bad place to long. Why? Because we're right in the middle of a high volume area. So again, this high volume, it's going to be hard for price to get through that. That's not a great area to go long. A retest, again, look at how we kind of pushed up and then retested the point of control down here, but that's not where I want to get long. You can see we didn't make it through. We did not make it through this volume cluster. So this reversal, even though we're getting like from a price action standpoint, it kind of looks like we have a higher low, a higher high, a higher low, a higher high. We still want to be cautious. But what we could do is say this is starting to look like an uptrend. So let's start to just see how volume is loading up here. And we do have this kind of chunk of volume here, price coming down and testing. And if we do still have a long bias, this would be a healthier area to get long, not here, because at least here we have this volume to lean on, right? I don't know that I would have gotten long that early. I'd have to look at the order flow and the delta for me to have confirmation. But again, we didn't break a previous volume node. So for me, this is not this downtrend is still intact, right? Because all we've done is volume, move, volume, move, volume, move, volume, and we haven't broke the previous volume area. We have warning signs, but no confirmation of it yet. You can see we get continued down movement. So anybody who was fooled into a long just watching the price action got pretty burned there. For me, I wouldn't have gone long because I'm waiting for this to break. So the other thing I want to do is remove this because this is still just part of our downtrend. So I'm just going to keep this profile and just see what's going on. Now we're building more volume down here. And because we're building more volume down here, now if we come back up through this cluster, so let me get rid of some of this stuff. So now this is now our previous volume area because again, we're forming a new one down here. So now this is the area I'm watching. I want to see us cleanly break this and then possibly come down and test it from the top. And that's going to be when I start to look at longs. For the time being, you know, coming up just towards the bottom of it a little bit is just another short opportunity. Now, I believe at this point there was a lot of delta divergence, so I was not looking at shorts at this point. I was kind of sitting tight, waiting for something more clear. But again, see how his price comes back up and it's the underside of this volume. You start to get some resistance. See again. Notice the point of control of all of this is almost exactly the point of control from the previous up move from that hourly chart, right? This dotted line is from the upswing from the hourly chart from days ago. And it's almost exactly lining up with the point of control here. So if you do have a short bias, again, I believe when I was trading yesterday, I was not looking to get short at this point because if I remember correctly, there was divergence in the cumulative delta. We were really extended on like the 5-minute chart and the 15-minute chart. This had been a big move down and I had already made some good profits, so I wasn't really looking to give that back. But let's just see what happens here. So we're building this volume. I know this video is getting kind of long, but bear with me because I just really want you guys to see how the reversal occurs. So notice we're built volume here, a little bit down here, but really this volume here. And we actually did, so you can consider this its own node if you want to. We did then kind of come up and break up through a previous node, right? This is the first time all day long that we've broken through a previous node, right? Because this is the sort of the last one that we accumulated down here, right? That was just this little stuff down here. And then we broke up through this. Now let's, just out of curiosity, again, I didn't do this ahead of time. I did trade this day and it was just yesterday, so it's somewhat fresh in my mind, but let's just draw another dotted line there. So we broke up through that volume. We're coming down, testing that VPOC from the top now. Let's just see what happens from here. Notice again how we had a little wick form there. It went away as the candle closed, but we had that little wick form there. We basically broke through this node, tested it from the top, and didn't go through it, right? That it held from the top, and now we're pushing up. Now this is starting to look like a reversal. See, this was a fake out reversal. We never broke through this volume node. Here, we broke through the volume node right here. You see that? Right? You see how this is above this volume node? And we tested the VPOC from the top, and now we're pushing up. This would have been a great place to get long. Don't know if this is the exact reversal point, but it's at least where you start to get those warning signs in. Now we want to see, right, if we start coming down through this again, let's say I am long, and then we're re-entering this and we start going down through it, I'm getting out of that long, right? I'm getting out because we tried to move up, we hit the next up volume area, which was a quite large one. kind of tested from the underside, right? There's much, much more volume here than was here, and we didn't get through it. I'm probably exiting my long. If I didn't, honestly, I probably would have just gotten in here, 79. And if I'm scalping, I would have been out, honestly, before I even hit this. I probably would have gotten out even like here at the bottom of this, 79 to, you know, 83. I mean, that's plenty of a move for a scalper. I often scalp, 4 to 6 ticks myself. So that's plenty for me. But if I am trying to hold a more position trade and we failed to break this volume and we came back down into this volume again, my warning flags are up a little bit. But let's see what happens. It held. Okay. Now, if we get above this cleanly, then we really have something to work with to the long side. Got above it, kind of testing it from the top side a little bit. And so now what we're looking at, as price starts to move up, what we know is above all this volume, there's going to be stops. Above all this volume, there's going to be stops. Above all this volume, there's going to be stops. And that's often where price is going to go. It's going to start taking out these volumes as it continues to go up. So we've got our profile from our down move. The down move looks like it went to here before we broke a previous volume node. So then what I'll start doing, I'll keep that on my chart, and then I start tracking the volume on the move up. Because as I want to get long, right, you can see there's a bunch of volume right here. We moved up, we came back to the top of that volume. That's where I want to start looking at getting long, right? You could have gotten long here early or here early, but this is another great area to get long. And then we just continue the same thing on the way up, right? So that's the way I use volume profile when I'm scalping. It's super helpful to have a volume profile drawing tool. So like TradingView's got it, NinjaTrader's got it. I know a lot of the other platforms have it. I used to trade on Thinkorswim. They don't have it, but what I would do on Thinkorswim is I set up my 1-minute chart or my 30-minute chart to produce a new profile every 30 minutes. And that gave me at least a decent picture of what's going on. But you can see we're breaking the volumes from the upswing. And again, what you might want to do, like you can, here, let's do this. Let's remove our drawings. Let's just put this back on here, our downswing, and start to draw our upswing. So as you're coming up, you may want to be aware of those previous volume areas because those are going to act as resistance. And like if you're long and you're approaching those, you might want to, at least tighten up your stops a little bit. My computer's slowing down a little here. These are areas where we know we just want to sort of exercise a little caution, right? And you can see how, price reacts to that. See how it came right up almost to that high volume and then starts to slow down. So the previous areas give us like our targets, Some people will hold to see if this gets taken out. I like to get out before it personally, but I'm a scalper. I don't like holding through choppy stuff. So some of that's just, trading style. But then again, as this is building and we're watching our profile develop, right? So we see volume accumulated here, kind of came up here, tested towards the top of that volume. We also had this previous level from the downswing. That's a good area to get long, right? This is a good area to get long. Price moved up out of this volume, testing the top side. That's where you can consider getting long. And again, you're looking at other things too. See, so easily a scalp on this, right? You got long where this volume started, and 0350, that's 3 points there. Again, I scalp 4 to 6 ticks a lot of times, so it's really easy to catch that kind of movement off of these higher volume areas. So probably a little bit longer of a video than I intended, but I hope that gives some clarity as to how we conceptualize volume profile and then how we use it to help us with our scalping entries and exits. Okay. Oh, By the way, I did take a long down here, based off of the, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Based off of the higher time frame, when I saw all that consolidation lining up with this area, which had a bunch of volume on it, I got long with some micro contracts intending it to be a swing. And because it was a swing trade, I'm looking at the larger time frame. And you don't even really need a profile for this because you can just see, when you see this much price action, there's going to be volume accumulated there. But I wanted to see, where did the high volume start? I wanted to get out kind of conservatively. There was this kind of ledge right here. I probably could have held more up here, but I put my target at 45. It was a very conservative target, and that got hit pretty easily. So, um, you can see how price moved out of here on the 4 hour, right? So just around the 1 hour, really just went right up to it. I could have taken more out of it. I probably should have, but yeah, the market's just been so bearish. I think I was a little bit gun shy there, but it doesn't really matter. I use the profile the same, um, regardless of what time frame I'm trading. And this is just one piece of the puzzle, right? There's a lot to consider when you're trading. Again, I always start my day looking at the higher time frame. The other thing that I always look at, because I have studied a little bit of Dalton's work, so a lot of times I'll pull up a 15 or a 30-minute chart, and I will have the, see, I don't have it on here. I'll have the session volume, right? So just having a little bit of an understanding of market auction theory and Jim Dalton's work, and I look at, where we are in relation to the previous day, what is the shape of the daily profile. A lot of that informs my decision making as well. So there's a lot of moving parts here, but when we're just talking about volume profile for scalping, that's how I do it. I hope this was really helpful for you guys and that you learned something. By the way, if you want to join our Discord, it is free. I don't have anything to sell you. I had a membership going for a while because I had some indicators I built, but I have other businesses, and it honestly was just more than I wanted to manage. I enjoy sharing. I enjoy talking about the market. I enjoy teaching. So I literally have nothing to sell you. It's just a free Discord chat. Happy to answer any questions. I really enjoy helping others. I'm not a trading guru. I'm not a trading educator. I'm just a guy who enjoys trading, and I am myself learning. Um, in fact, I only recently started using order flow. That's very new to me. So I'm not like, again, I'm not, I'm one of the guys on YouTube that I guess is just not trying to sell you anything. But so if you want to join our Discord, I'll put the link in the comments section. And if you want to join, you can. And, it's a great place to learn in a nice community. So, all right. Thanks, everybody.